This is the Jeff Jarena Show.
Hey, and welcome back to the show, and I'm glad you're tuning in today because today's episode is one that I think every Christian leader, whether you're running a business, leading a team, a school, maybe a church, or you're just now starting out in entrepreneurship, or you're just trying to lead yourself well, I think these questions, if you are in that camp, really needs to hear. Now, over the years, I've had the opportunity to lead in corporate settings, coach entrepreneurs, consult with churches and schools, and mentor individuals, and I've noticed that a lot of leaders look successful on the outside. We can really trick a lot of people, right? We look like everything's going great. The numbers are up, the lights are on, the content is flowing, we're getting more customers, but inside, those individuals are stuck. They're frustrated. Or they're just running on autopilot, like they're just going through the motions. And I think more than anything, they're asking, is this really making a difference? Is what I'm doing making an impact? And that's why today I want to walk you through 5 must-ask questions that I use for myself and with leaders that I coach. And I think that these questions are going to help you lead with clarity, impact, and peace rather than just pressure and activity. Now, if you want to go deeper after this episode, I put together a really cool tool to help you do just that. It's called the Leaders Reset Checklist. It's a 10-step worksheet to help you realign your leadership with your God-given purpose. And here's the deal. If you want it, I'll send it to you personally. All you have to do is go to my website at jeffjarena.com. Make sure you go to the contact page. That's jeffjarena.com/contact. And on that contact form, all you have to do is just send me a quick message saying, hey, send me the checklist. That's it. I'll reply with the download, and you'll be the first one to hear about a deeper leadership challenge I'm creating for leaders just like you. And hey, before we kickstart this episode here, I want to let you know that the 5 questions in this podcast episode, these are not fluff questions. I really think that these questions are going to challenge you in a good way. And if you're willing to reflect on them honestly, now that's honestly, they may just shift the way you lead forever. So grab a notebook, your notes app, or whatever you've got handy, and let's jump in. And hey, if you're in a spot where you can't take notes, no worries, as I'll put the questions, all these questions in the show notes of this podcast episode, which is going to be jeffjarena.com/podcast/the 5 leadership questions. And make sure that you put a dash between each one of those words. And the words I'm talking about are at the very end of that URL. And that's the-5-leadership-questions. All right, so here's the first question. The first question is, am I leading people or just managing tasks? Now, this is a simple but revealing question because leadership isn't about keeping the machine running, such as, your business, the systems in your business, the processes, the sales, the marketing, the customer service, so on and so forth. It's about building people. So are you investing in those you lead, or are you just making sure things get done? So ask yourself this question. When was the last time that you helped someone grow, not just complete a task? Now, if it's been a while, it might be time to recalibrate your style of leadership. Okay, so the second question is this. Is my leadership aligned with my calling or my calendar? Now, this is a big one here because a full schedule doesn't necessarily mean you're on the right path, right? It could mean that you're just super busy without any of that activity leading to any real fruit or impact, especially in the lives of those you lead. I mean, I think of the adage here, don't just be a busy bee, right? Make sure that your work is doing something, that it's amounting to something, not just activity. So if you allow me here, I want you to ask yourself this question. Does how I spend my time reflect what God actually called me to do? Because sometimes your calendar needs to be disrupted in order to get back to your calling. And what I'm talking about there is what God has called you to do and how He wants you to lead. And so the third question is this. Are you prioritizing growth or health? Now, growth is good, right? But if it comes at the expense of your spiritual health or your relationships or just feeling at peace, then it's not the type of growth that you want. So ask this question here. Are you building something healthy or something big, something that's noticeable, that you think is going to gain a lot of attention? And remember, healthy things grow, but growing things aren't always healthy. Think about weeds or mold, or fungus. Those things definitely grow, but they're not healthy. It's kind of like this. Think of a cancer cell. It grows aggressively, rapidly, and uncontrollably, but it's not healthy. In fact, its growth comes at the cost of the rest of the body. It's the same with leadership. If your pace of growth is outpacing your time, your energy, your heart, or maybe your team's capacity, or your family's peace, you're not scaling successfully. And at some point, what you're building is going to eventually collapse, right? So I would just say this before we get to the next question. Make sure you choose health over hustle. And so the fourth question is this. Do the people that you lead trust you, or do they just follow you? Now, there's a big difference here between compliance and trust. Compliance is when people do what you say because they have to. A lot of times we could just, call that fear-based leadership. But trust is when people follow your lead because they want to. In a leadership, especially kingdom-driven leadership, that distinction really matters. So let me give you a real-world contrast that brings this to life. Adolf Hitler versus Nelson Mandela. Now, both of these individuals, both of these men were powerful, charismatic leaders who rallied nations and movements. But how they led and what they built couldn't have been more different. Now, Hitler led by fear. He demanded loyalty. He used propaganda, threats, and just brute force to control people. And millions followed him, not because they believed in him, but because they were afraid not to, of what would happen to them. Now, that's compliance. And look where it led. Destruction, division, genocide, and ultimately collapse. Now, that's what happens when leadership is fueled by fear. Now, let's flip the coin here. Let's look at the other side of the equation. Let's look at Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, and when he was released, he had every reason to lead with vengeance. But he didn't do that. Instead, he chose reconciliation. And because of that, he led South Africa not by force, but by vision, through forgiveness and courage. Now, people didn't follow Mandela out of obligation. They followed him because they trusted his heart and believed in his vision. Now, that's the difference right there between control and influence, between compliance and trust, between fear and reverence. So ask yourself today as a leader, are people following me because they have to or because they want to? Because when you lead from trust, you don't just get results, you leave a legacy. You lift people up. You help them become better. So if you want to build something that lasts, start by building trust. All right, so the last question is this. Are you leading for applause or from approval? Now, this question right here, this one's personal for me because I've been on both sides of this, and maybe you have too. Because there's something intoxicating about the applause, right? The likes, the downloads, the shares, the sales, the attaboys, great job, all the speaking invites, the platform growth, the increase in your salary, all of that feels good, right? And it looks good. And I remember here, let me just give you a quick sidebar. I remember many, many episodes ago when I first started the podcast, at that time it was called the Men Unplugged Show. And I had former Congressman J.C. Watts on the show. You may have listened to this episode already. If you haven't, I would just encourage you to go back to the archives and listen to the very, very early episodes. And one of the things he said here, I'd asked him about his accolades, how that felt about all the stuff that he did. And he said, Jeff, the thing about getting all those great things and leadership and all those different things is that the noise of the crowd is intoxicating. And you have to figure out a way to block that out. And that's so true, right? Because this stuff is great to get as a leader or whatever capacity a leadership that you have right now. It's great to have those things. And none of those really are bad in themselves, right? But here's the danger. And J.C. Watts kind of talked about it there. When that applause becomes your fuel, it will eventually become your prison. It's going to keep you focused more on what you do and instead of helping everybody else. And so when you lead for applause, you're always performing, right? You're constantly measuring your worth, your identity by other people's reactions, what they think of you. And when those claps stop, there's this tendency that seems to happen where your confidence collapses with it, where you lose your identity like, man, I'm not getting that affirmation anymore. There must be something wrong with me. But when you lead from approval, from that settled truth that you're already loved by God, already chosen by God, already seen by God, then you can lead with peace even when it's quiet, even when you get nothing in return. And you can show up faithfully even when the numbers dip. You can speak boldly even when it's unpopular. You can rest because you're not trying to earn your worth. So here's the real question to wrestle with. And this is the question you're going to ask yourself. Am I trying to earn my worth, or am I already rooted in who God says I am? Now that shift right there changes everything. And I spoke about that on a couple episodes ago. But that shift changes everything. So let me give you a real life contrast that shows this to where we can understand it today. So think about David versus Saul in the Old Testament. Saul was chosen, but he was insecure, right? He led for the applause, the roar of the crowd, constantly worried about how he looked, what people thought, and how he measured up. And when the people started singing, David is slaying his 10,000s and Saul his thousands, Saul started to unravel. His identity was tied to the crowd, and when the crowd turned, he lost it all. But David, here's the thing about David. David was far from perfect, but he led from approval. Even in the fields, before anyone knew his name, he was worshiping God. He was writing psalms. He was anchoring himself in God's presence. He didn't need the throne to affirm himself. He already had been affirmed by the one who matters most, Yahweh. So let me ask you this. When you stand up to lead, whether that's preaching or podcasting or running your business or raising your family, whatever that is, what's driving you? What's your motivation? Is it the applause of people, or is it the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are in Jesus Christ? Because one's going to exhaust you, and the other one is going to sustain you and fulfill you. All right, so I want to quickly recap these 5 must-ask questions for every Christian leader. First question is this: am I leading people or just managing tasks? Second one, is my leadership aligned with my calling or just my calendar? Third question, am I setting a precedent for growth or for health? And the fourth question, do the people I lead trust me or do they just follow me? And the last question is, am I leading for applause or from approval? Now, which one of those hit you the hardest? Here's your challenge. Take one of those questions and spend some time journaling, praying, and asking God to show you what needs to shift. Now, if you want a practical tool to go along with this episode, I've got something just for you. It's called the Leader's Reset Checklist. It's a simple but powerful 10-step worksheet to help you evaluate where you are and realign your leadership with your kingdom-driven purpose. And here's how to get it. All you have to do is go to my website at jeffjarena.com. Make sure you go to the contact page. It's jeffjarena.com/contact. And when you're there, you're going to see a little form there. Make sure that you send me a quick message that says, send me the checklist. That's it. So whether you're just starting out or you've been leading for years, you don't have to do it alone. You can lead with clarity, with peace, and boldness. But it starts by asking the right questions. Hey, thank you so much again for joining me today on the podcast. Until next time, stay faithful, lead boldly, and make it count. I'll see you on the next one. God bless.